Hello and welcome. I'm Uncle Badger. I wish you all good health and welcome. Today I'm going to be doing another book through. I've sort of done one and a half. The first one was a bit rough round the edges, or rough round the edges. If I'm not doing a Scooby-Doo impression, rough round the edges. Even though I look more like Shaggy. But yeah, today I'm doing another book through. This might be more succinct than the previous one, and just generally better organised. The previous one was the first one. I hadn't really come up with a proper way of doing a look through of a book or book through. These videos are not necessarily actual reviews. I'm not looking into critiquing the contents of any books in the book through. They are look-throughs of a book that I really appreciate. It's more sort of a recommendation of that someone who, if anyone watches this that might be interested in the contents of the book, to get the book, look at the relevant material. It's so that interested parties might better gauge what the book is about. Yes, I thought I might explain that a bit more. I think I had a comment on one of the previous videos from someone that was a bit confused about that, and sort of, yeah, they recommended that people should go and read the book and view the author's videos. Yeah, and I thought I'd already covered that in the video, that's what I was attempting to invite people to do, read the book and well, yeah. Anyway, I'm digressing. I'm having please ignore that was a touch of a whinge. Today I am going to be looking at Morgan Daimler's Living Faery. You can see on there it's got a name at the bottom, Living Faery. That's the publisher's Pagan Portals. They do sort of quite slim books. Pagan Portals series by Moon Books. They do sort of beginner's guides to things, and this one, they're all roughly about this sort of size. They're all sort of perhaps about £5, which is about $8. That's new, and they're all roughly, this one's about 90 pages long, and they're sort of beginner's guides, and they have sort of tales and experiences from experienced practitioners of witchcraft, paganism and Wicca, and also sort of guides to different sorts of paganism, witchcraft, Wicca, and I think Morgan Daimler herself has done a book on Odin, I think. I'd have to check, but I'm not really here to talk about all the other books. We're looking at The Living Faery, and I don't know if you could see when I was holding it up, Faery, Witchcraft and Star Worship. Morgan Daimler has been into Faery witchcraft for quite a while. I think most of her books that pertain specifically to Faery witchcraft, one of which I read quite a while ago. I think it was late 2018, about Christmas time 2018. I'd have to reread it. I might do book throughs of most of her books, but we're looking at this one first. I was quite impressed. Morgan Daimler seems to be moving on, progressing in her craft, and Yeah, trying to find the... Yeah, it starts with a poem called Dangerous Things. Author's note. And I've gone into the book. There we go. Here's the contents page. Yeah, Morgan Daimler has noticed that the stars seem to be more important for fairy workings than the sun or the moon. So I'm not too up on astrology, and I suppose this is a chance to start learning. But yeah, I was particularly interested by this because it homes in particularly on the Pleiades, one particular star system that seems to have a certain amount of irregularity in its orbit around through the sky and stuff. So it's not quite the same as the North Star or anything like that. So that's quite curious. Yeah, and it goes. The book goes into. I'll go through the contents page first, but we have the author's note, introduction, calling the other crowd back. Chapter 1, going deeper, then in practice. What comes in dreams, engaging with liminal gods and fairy queens. The Pleiades, the equinoxes, and the fairies. Rituals for the Pleiades. And then it goes into the details of ritual to honour the culmination of the Pleiades. It goes into more details about those rituals for the Pleiades. So, ritual to honour the culmination of the Pleiades, the conjunction of the Pleiades, the darkening, ritual for the heliarchal rising of the Pleiades, and ritual for the Pleiades, the way opening, or perhaps even the opening of the way. Then it goes into notes after one full year of her practice and coming up with the contents of the book, and conclusion. There's Appendix A, resources, Appendix B, fiction, and a bibliography as well. So it's a decent bibliography as well, and it's and recommendations. I mean, most of it's sort of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 10 pages of bibliography. So yeah, there's plenty to go through, and it all touches on fairy craft. So it's quite interesting for anyone who wishes to work with the fairies. But I'll go into stuff a bit more. Yeah, it's a Dangerous Things, a poem. Then the author's note, Morgan Daimler touches on how and why she connected the fairies with the Pleiades, and why she's taking this in her fairy workings into such a direction. Yeah, and it's calling the others back, and yeah, it's getting past some of the Christian teachings, particularly Protestant, and not sort of regarding a lot of the entities not as demons but as elemental beings, which is what they are. It's sort of like considering things as those kind of beings as they should be, and getting past the misconceptions brought on, well, unfortunately by Christians, labelling everything demons that isn't listed in the Bible as an angel. But yeah, it's going deeper, good people. Referring to them as good people. there's a bit on some words of caution. Yes, they're not all Tinkerbell. There's a wide variety of them, and I've seen in some references that if you were to look at Brian Froud's The Faery Oracle and some Brian Froud books, that not all of them are twee and Disney-fied. It's always good to look at some of the original fairy tales to get a good gist of what you're looking at. There's mention of the Tuatha De Danann, or the clumsy anglicised version of the Tuatha De Danann. Tuatha De Danann. Yeah. Then there's parts on. There are end notes on each segment. Yeah. Then we go into some of the practices, purifying and cleansing. There's stuff about drawing circles and which direction is best in regards to working with fairies, and it's not the usual way of drawing a circle. And I think partly, here we go, we'll go on to doing other stuff. Fairy witchcraft circles. Yeah, and it goes into that, and it talks about stuff like that, pagan witchcraft that isn't deity focused. Yeah, and we're talking about like a race of beings. You do get quite a variety of, much like how you get quite like with humanity, you get quite a large variety of different people under humanity. Much like that, when we're talking about the Fae, there's a similar breadth of different characters and entities, yes, that look wildly different, that are of wildly different sizes. Like, I'm not exactly thin myself, for instance. Yeah, and they have their intentions and desires and agendas are wildly different. You might find Tinkerbells, but you might find ones that are more energy forms, and ones that are quite malicious. Yeah, the fairies that you might read about in horror stories, who would swap children, perhaps eat them. Some of the changeling legends and stuff like that. Well, yeah, more notes. Here we go. What comes in dreams? Yeah, there's yeah, and it's Morgan Daimler shares a few things like a healing charm. Amongst other things, there's a type of cake for an offering, and other stuff that it's about sort of paying attention to dreams. You might get visited in dreams and have have things partake, bits of knowledge sent to you in dreams and things. So it's that's something to pay attention to. But we also have engaging with the liminal gods and fairy queens. Before, where it said that it wasn't not necessarily a deity focused thing, I think Morgan Daimler said that she was not necessarily deity focused anymore, but she would be offering to the fairies in general, be working up a relationship with certain individuals from the other realm, and that there were so I don't have enough fingers, that there were 7 fairy queens, all responsible for different things, and there was also a fairy king who was sort of protector, a guardian. And it's there's touch on the Lord of Mischief, Thalia and Thalia and Thessaly, and the Seven Queens. These were specific higher ruling Fae that Morgan Daimler had met throughout her workings. And there were fairy queens for a number of stuff. Queen of the Wave, Queen of Stone, Crane Queen, amongst others. Goes into that a little bit more. Then it goes into the Pleiades, the equinoxes and the fairies, and the relevance. Because what I found is quite a while ago when I found during a bit of a sort of in a previous video in the mystical book archive. I'm sure it was in that have recently filmed, and that should all the previous video before this one. Towards the end, touch upon a sort of an awakening that I'd had around. Well, it started with reading some Celtic fairy tales and progressed throughout the summer of 2017. There was looking into Starseeds and Pleiadians and things like that, and I know that there are a group or two about Starseed elves and Starseed fairies, so it's curious to see references and workings actually associated with some of that. But I digress. I'm going to do another video. I think it should be out soon after this. I'm going to talk briefly on that. But it was some Starseeds and Pleiadians and things was something I read quite a fair amount about during an awakening in 2017. I still have a couple of books that I have from that time. They're in one of my previous mystical book archives. I think it's number 2 or 3, I think. I'm unsure. But yes. And I'll touch on that at a later point. But yeah, we get into looking at the Pleiades, the equinoxes. The holy holidays for living fairy associated with the Pleiades. They're a bit different to, say, Samhain, Beltane, Ostara and things like that. The only one that seems to really correspond properly is May Day. And I'm going to point out May Day. May Day again, 1st of May. That's quite an important one. There's some stuff in here. I think it's only about a fortnight from me. It's about 3 weeks away from when I film this and upload. It's about 3 weeks away. So be quick, get a copy if you're interested, read it, and get things set up for the 1st of May. I'm planning on doing something for the 1st of May myself. I'll be reading through the relevant section again and getting preparations done. I think I'm going to do it working before that. But anyway, this looks at it's the generalisations of the Fae, the Pleiades, and actual dates that are important as they ride out from the Pleiades. It's the thought that the fairies might come from the Pleiades, as there are mentions. As the Pleiades are mentioned in quite a number of other texts and a lot of other legends going way back. And we go into the rituals for the Pleiades, rituals to honour the culmination of the Pleiades. This goes into the specific what to do for that, with the celestial fairy raid, a ritual versus ritual feast with some cakes that were recipe for which were presented to Morgan Daimler in a dream. And it ends with some of her notes and personal experiences. And there's the conjunction of the Pleiades, the darkening, which is in May. And it goes into the darkening when the Pleiades darken and the fairies go out on their raids and are more present on Earth. As a bit of a note, Mayday, the walls between this world and the next, the other world, are meant to be as thin as they are on Halloween. So it's every 6 months the walls are very thin, and people can visit the other realm, or beings from the other realm can come and visit us. But conjunction with the Pleiades for May is structured similarly: ritual feast, and some personal experiences and notes by Morgan Daimler. Well, and me. Then it's the ritual for the heliacal rising of the Pleiades. That's middle of June. Structured similarly with ritual feast, personal experiences, notes. And lastly, ritual for the Pleiades, the way opening, or opening of the way. That's when, that's the general date of the autumn equinox. And it talks about the opening of the way, and similar sort of structure to that. Then there's notes after one full year. That's a page long, and a conclusion, which is 4 pages with a few notes at the end. And then with resources, and we go into different books, blogs, books and blogs, top recommendation for fiction, secondary recommendations, and there was Modern Fairy Tales by Holly Black, she did the Spiderwick Chronicles were hers, I think. But yeah, there's also Jonathan Strange and Mr. Norrell by Susan Clark. TV series was made of that. But yeah, and then it goes into a few more recommendations. And I was quite impressed by this. I've rather liked elves and fairies and things for quite a while. Like I mentioned at the start of the video, of several of Morgan Daimler's books. And I am going to attempt to follow the rituals in these books. I'm attempting to do some over the next few weeks before May. I'm planning on doing a few things to try and warm up and reintroduce myself to themselves again. Yes. And then I'm planning on doing some of following this. Morgan Daimler does say that this is quite a new direction for her and her practices. I think there's a degree of her wanting this to be a communal thing. So if anyone does pick the book up, find that it speaks to them and they want to also practice a lot of what's in this book and look into the fairies and the Pleiades, then they can message her and sort of compare notes and add to things, tell her things that coincide and might add to things. There's the thought that instead of there might be 3 more festivals on top of the 4 that are noted in this. Most of the festivals in here are from spring and summer and autumn, and don't really cover the winter period, for example. But yeah, it's I'm planning on probably getting involved with that in some way or another. Morgan Daimler also has her own Facebook group, and she also has her own YouTube channel. I will do my very best to put links to those in the description below, and I hope you enjoyed this video, and if you should get this book, that you enjoy its contents and any links I can put up. I wish you all good health and a goodbye. Bye bye everyone.